If I've stood in front of the mirror wondering why my belly fat won't go away despite diets, workouts, cutting carbs, or eating clean, I'm not lazy or broken. I know the real issue usually isn't willpower. I learned its chemistry. To understand how I can lose body fat, especially stubborn belly fat, I need to understand what it is and why it behaves differently. There are two main types of fat around my midsection. Subcutaneous fat is the soft layer just under the skin. Visceral fat is deeper and surrounds organs like my liver, pancreas, and intestines. Visceral fat isn't just stored energy, it's hormonally active, produces inflammatory signals, and is strongly linked to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. So when I talk about losing belly fat, I'm not just talking about aesthetics, I'm talking about metabolic health. Now I'll talk about the hormone that controls whether that fat gets burned or stored. Insulin. Every time I eat, especially refined carbs or sugar, insulin rises. Insulin's job is to help move glucose out of my bloodstream and into my cells. Insulin also acts like a lock on my fat cells, so when insulin is high, fat burning is low, and when it drops, fat burning becomes possible. This is why constantly eating, even healthy snacks, can make fat loss difficult. If I'm eating every 2 to 3 hours, insulin rarely gets the chance to fall. If insulin stays elevated, my body has no reason to tap into stored fat for fuel. This brings me to one of the most powerful tools for improving metabolic health: fasting. Fasting isn't new. Humans have practiced it for thousands of years. What's changed is our modern eating pattern, where many of us eat from the moment we wake up until right before bed. When I extend the time between meals, in other words, when I fast, insulin drops. When insulin drops low enough for long enough, my body begins switching fuel sources. I think of my body like a kitchen with two energy storage units, a fridge and a freezer. The fridge is glycogen, the stored carbohydrates from recent meals, and it's easy to access. The freezer is body fat, the long-term energy storage. As long as there's food in the fridge, my body won't open the freezer. It takes roughly 10 to 12 hours for my body to significantly reduce glycogen stores. Once that happens, my body begins metabolic switching, transitioning from burning glucose to burning fat. This is when my fat loss actually begins. Short-term fasting does not slow my metabolism, and research shows my metabolic rate can temporarily increase during short fasts. Hormones such as adrenaline and growth hormone rise, and growth hormone helps preserve lean muscle while I burn fat for fuel. From an evolutionary perspective, when food was scarce, we became alert and focused to find it rather than weak and useless. That is why I notice increased mental clarity after I adapt to fasting. As my glycogen drops, my liver starts producing ketones from fat. Ketones provide an efficient fuel source for my brain. My brain then runs on a more stable energy supply instead of blood sugar spikes and crashes. Fasting is not magic, it is a tool. Food quality still matters. Highly processed foods, especially refined flour and sugar, create rapid spikes in glucose and insulin. When processing removes fiber, carbohydrates are absorbed faster, causing larger insulin responses and stronger cravings later. Fiber slows digestion, stabilizes blood sugar, and improves satiety. Whole foods such as vegetables, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and seeds provide the fiber that helps regulate insulin rather than overwhelm it. Protein also plays an important role. It supports muscle maintenance during fat loss. While protein can raise insulin slightly, it does so in a different context to refined carbohydrates and does not typically promote fat storage in the same way. The real problem in modern diets is not protein or healthy fats. It is ultra-processed foods and constant eating frequency. Now I will address a common fear: muscle loss. During short-term fasting, my growth hormone increases to help preserve lean mass. As long as I have adequate body fat and am not fasting excessively, my body prefers to burn fat first. However, and this is important, fasting is not unlimited. If my body fat becomes extremely low and fasting continues too long, my body will eventually start breaking down muscle to meet energy needs. This is not where most people are. It reminds me that fasting should be used strategically, not recklessly. As a beginner, I find a simple approach works best. I start with 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. That alone can be a major improvement. Then I gradually extend to 14 or 16 hours if it feels manageable. This is commonly called 16-8 intermittent fasting, meaning 16 hours fasting and 8 hours eating. I do not need multi-day fasts to improve my health. I break my fast intelligently. If I finish a 16-hour fast with ultra-processed carbohydrates, I spike insulin sharply and undo some of the hormonal benefit. I break my fast with protein, fiber, and whole foods to keep my blood sugar stable. I prioritize movement. I prioritize sleep. I prioritize stress management. I use strength training to improve insulin sensitivity and preserve muscle. I walk after meals to reduce blood sugar spikes. I protect my sleep because sleep deprivation raises cortisol and can increase abdominal fat storage. I manage chronic stress because it keeps my body in a defensive state that makes fat loss harder. I pay attention to leptin, the hormone that signals fullness. In obesity, leptin resistance can mean my brain does not respond properly to fullness signals. By reducing visceral fat and improving insulin sensitivity, I can help restore hormonal balance over time. For me, the bigger picture is not about starvation or extreme dieting. It is about metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch between burning carbohydrates and burning fat efficiently. If I am metabolically flexible, I can skip a meal without crashing. I can eat carbohydrates without dramatic blood sugar swings. My hormones respond appropriately. That is the real goal. It is not just weight loss, it is health. The key takeaway for me is that fat loss happens when insulin is low enough for long enough to allow fat to be used as fuel. I eat less frequently. I reduce processed carbohydrates. I increase fiber. I prioritize protein. I sleep well. I manage stress. I move my body consistently. I do not need perfection. I need consistency. My body is not my enemy. My body is responding to signals. When I change the signals, the results follow. If I understand the biology, I stop blaming myself and I start working with my physiology instead of against it. That is when real, sustainable fat loss begins.